They called him the Diesel.
Crank up that diesel. Let's go.
He leaned across the table and he goes, "You need to get me back there. I'll make you famous."
And to Riggins, good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20. He's gone. He's gone.
It's Riggo the Diesel.
Well, hello. This is John Riggins. Welcome to Riggo the Diesel. Joining me is Larry Michael, the voice of the Voice and Redskins, and we are still broadcasting from our homes. Our second week. This is show number 74 overall, and season 2, show 34. Larry, what was your last week like?
Wow. It's been really busy, John, trying to sustain work and to deal with, there's a lot of anxiety, obviously, in the public. A lot of folks, wondering what's going to happen next, and we're just going to have to be patient and follow the guidelines that have been presented. I did have the opportunity yesterday to take a trip out to FedEx Field, where in one of the parking lots across from where the main entrance is to the stadium and where the stadium store where they sell all the merchandise, they have set up a tent village. The National Guard is there, and they've set up a screening site. And I got a chance to speak to the chief of police of Prince George's County. I got a chance to talk from the colonel from the Army National Guard. And what's going on there is people who have orders to get tested, they need to get an appointment to come, and they can kind of drive into one of these tents, get tested. And by the time they get home and, the results get back to them, it's very, very surreal at the stadium. But also it's kind of cool because people are going to get tested, and hopefully we can get through this thing together. But to see that in the parking lot of the football stadium was definitely unusual.
It's funny that you bring that up, because I was thinking this morning and even in yesterday about some moments in history in my lifetime that it's, really it forms a timeline. Obviously, because I happen to be in New York City on 9/11. I was about, 3 miles, maybe 2 miles, somewhere 3 miles from ground zero up there. Of course, because of the height of the buildings, we really couldn't see anything. And the wind was out of the west, if I'm not mistaken. So the smoke and everything was blowing towards Long Island for the most part. It wasn't until the next day that the wind changed. You could smell that acrid smell of a chemical kind of a fire. Then about 4 years later, I forget what it was, I was in New York City when they had the blackout. And all these moments in time where you literally see things that were the word surreal, really, that is the definition of the word surreal. Because I remember during 9/11, I lived on 9th Avenue, and I overlooked the avenue. I could see the Lincoln Tunnel from where I was, one of the tubes going into it, a couple of them actually. And I remember about, late morning on that Tuesday, all these people walking up 9th Avenue in the middle of the street, were, like I say, surreal. It was a business day. Normally there would be all kinds of street traffic going the opposite direction, cars, buses, and all that. All these people are coming up, and then coming out of the tunnel a couple of days later and looking back when they finally had eased things, because Giuliani locked the city down, looking down and seeing the towers were gone. It was like dumbfounding. And as I said, 3 years later, then they had the blackout. And I remember I was at the dentist, I'm walking back to my apartment, and I noticed that the street lights were out, but I didn't think too much of it. And as I got closer to Midtown, I started seeing more and more people on the street. And by the time I got to my apartment, which is over on the west side, over by Port Authority, the streets were just flooded with people in cabs trying to get out of town. All of a sudden, and the thing you flash back to is right away, we've been attacked one more time. We're under attack. Turns out it was, the grid went down. Well, now flash forward to 2020, and here you have, these were isolated situations in two cities. 9/11 was Washington, D.C., New York City. The blackout was New York City. Now you have a situation that's worldwide. And I think, to go out, particularly if we were in New York City right now, the city's dead. You don't ever see that. Maybe on a Sunday morning, the traffic slows down, but it never stops. And here, you go out, there's hardly any traffic. I noticed because I live on the river, there's hardly any helicopters flying. There's hardly any planes that are moving in and out of Reagan Airport, which usually fly down the river a lot of times if that happens to be there, where the air traffic control is directing them in. But it's one of those moments where, and our children and they'll look back and they'll realize what a unique time this was. And it gets you in touch with the idea, I guess is what I wanted to say, with everything has gotten easier with the advent of computers. We got things at our fingertips. We can push a button and the next 2 hours later, actually 30 minutes later, you can have food at your door. I mean, we've gotten into a situation where we kind of lose touch with the fact that the world can be a pretty rough place to live. And unlike our far distant relatives, the caveman, when they left the house in the morning, there might be a saber-toothed tiger waiting for them outside the door. And we kind of got the feeling, well, we don't have to worry about that. But clearly when something like this happens, it gets you back in touch, I guess, with your mortality. And I have to say this, I'm a little concerned this morning, or I was, and I am right now. My wife is sick, and she doesn't seem to have the symptoms of this virus, but at the same time, she's in bed and she's got no energy. And so you kind of wonder, what are you working with? So it is an unusual time for sure. And now, as I think when this thing first started, I don't know how you were, but I kind of felt, the press is blowing this out of proportion like they always do. They're making a story out of it. Then you hear the sobering news yesterday, but a scenario that they have in the models that the doctors have put out with the press conference that the president had. They're looking at 100 to 200,000 Americans may die in the next 6 weeks or so. That's pretty sobering, I guess we got a place that we got to disembark from. But the fact that in a week's time, when we first did this, it seems like it's gotten more grave instead of less grave. We're in deeper than we were a week ago.
Well, they did say it was going to get worse before it gets better. So let's hope that the best case scenario is better than the scenario that you described, and that the social distancing and the fact that everybody seems to be listening. I know there's a lot of people, you hear stories about guys throwing parties and doing all this stuff, which I don't know what they're thinking or what, I'd be more concerned for the health of my family, because if you are exposed to it, you could give it to your family and it becomes something in your own home. So I think if everybody really listened, that's the one thing I take away from what the doctors say during these press conferences and everything. They're pretty much saying the same thing over and over. And the chief of police told me yesterday, you know what you and I can do? Here's what we can do. We can stay home and wash our hands, and we can have social distancing and do what more can you do? I mean, there's nothing more we can do as citizens to help get us through this, other than to try to do the recommendations and try to stay together. I think the longer this goes, the more anxiety is going to flare up. And I'm hoping that, as it was described, that it'll go kind of from city to city, kind of rolling through. And that I did hear some news yesterday, while New York is devastated, the rates are not as fast, or they're not multiplying as much as they were a few days ago. So I guess it's still bad news, but it's better news than it was a few days ago. So hopefully they start to recover. And I just know for everybody who's watching us here, we just like to bring some entertainment to everybody. So we won't get too heavy moving forward. But this is the reality we're living. Hey, John, how long did it take you to get your computer on?
Too long.
It took you a while. And I'm
Yes,
sitting here, and we're sitting here on these Zooms, and I'm doing the Redskins Nation TV show every day from my den. Stevie Ketz, by the way, doing a great job producing that show. And so what can we do? We can do what they tell us to do, and maybe we can offer people some entertainment. And so I think that's our job, I guess.
Well, and it's funny, I'm glad you said it, because that's the best way to end this up is what I always tell people when I go out and I give a speech, and it's all about just do your job. And everybody is a citizen of the United States, unless specifically you are a first responder or you work in a grocery store. The countless people that are out there on the lines that are making sure that the country still keeps moving, because obviously if something would happen to the food chain, then we got a serious problem on our hands. But right now, everybody's job is to just stay at home and keep things buttoned down. And that's the way we've been. I mean,
good job.
It's astonishing. What's astonishing is that, it's such a weird place to be, but when you look at it, that the price of petroleum has tanked, and yet nobody can really take advantage of it because
The gas tank's been full.
It's full. My tank is full. I haven't gone anywhere. I've been down to the drugstore to pick up some prescriptions, but that's it. So that's it.
Yeah,
Let's take a little break here, and then we'll
Yes.
jump back into the football if you want to.
Yeah, we got the draft to talk about. We've got some roster moves, and want to thank the folks at Youth Entrepreneurs. They've teamed up to the Redskins with their engaging, hands-on style to bring learning to classrooms in the DC metro area. It's free, absolutely free. Youth Entrepreneurs. Learn more about Youth Entrepreneurs. To experience it for yourself, visit getye.org. Also, want to thank the folks at RTS, great partner of the Redskins, official partner of the Redskins. Recycling trash, they are the best, connecting FedEx Field with smarter waste solutions to ensure more sustainability and a responsible approach to what's left behind after games. RTS, a better waste company. Find out more at rts.com.
Well, everybody knows for quite a while now, I've been somewhat the spokesman for O'Connor Plumbing, and I don't want anybody to think for a second that this is some kind of an advertisement. It's not. It's more of a if you have to, because I don't think right now there's anything more unsettling and anything that would give anybody more anxiety than having a stranger in your house. And O'Connor Plumbing fully understands that, and I just want to pass along to you. That's why I'm teamed with them, because they're a professional company. Their people cross all their T's, dot all their I's when it comes to their sanitation. If you have to have any kind of emergency service, and right now that's the only reason you're going to call a plumber is something. Obviously you need water. If something's wrong, or you need to fix this toilet or whatever it may be, be assured that O'Connor Plumbing, when they come to your house, that they will have gloves on, they will have shoes on, they will wash their hands. They're doing everything they can, because also they're at risk as well, just like the first responders. And so everybody's got to take care of everybody. 1-833-RIGGO-44. If you have an emergency, a plumbing emergency, give O'Connor Plumbing a call. I don't think they're going to disappoint you. Ladies and gentlemen, stand back and watch the Phoenix rise from the ashes.
Stand back. It's Riggo the Diesel.
All right, Larry, let's get into some of the football stuff. I'll let you go ahead and lead, because I think you maybe have a little list there, but then I've got some things I wanted to talk about as well.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I wanted to bring up in Riggo the Diesel, and I'm going to ask for your opinion here, because things were different when you were a player. But nowadays, you got all these different gyms. The weight room at Redskins Park is ridiculous, ridiculously nice. You've got all kinds of places you can go to work out, and from all the yoga classes to all this stuff. I mean, you can find a way to stay in shape. But players now, I've talked to a lot of the players over the last 2 weeks since free agency, and one of the common questions I've asked is, what are your plans over the next 3 weeks? What are you going to do to work out? And so, depending on who I talk to, one guy says to me, well, I got a weight set in my basement, and I got a nice field back behind my yard. I can get some running in. Another guy says, I don't know what I'm going to do. He says, I have no weights. I have no equipment. My gym is closed. And I live in a place where there's not a lot of space to run flat. And, there are different challenges there. One guy says, I'm doing chin-ups. I'm going to start doing chin-ups and push-ups. Another guy says, I might try to get some weights shipped to my house. Amazon will ship anything. Ship me some dumbbells, anything. So that's interesting. To the point where we really don't know when these players are going to get together. I think you're not looking at much of an off-season program. I think you can pretty much figure that, and we'll see what really comes out. But it might be later in the summer that they get together as a team. And so what kind of shape it's going to be? Everybody is going to be on the honor system, I guess, to get the work in, just like the studying they're going to have to do, which nowadays is much easier because they have virtual classrooms. They could go through their installations as a group using this very type of conference call we have here. They'll probably use the same thing. But it takes me back to what you guys had at your disposal, and you were in outstanding shape. I know you're a track star. So, what kind of changes have happened in the last 40 years in terms of training, off-season training? It's night and day.
I don't know how to answer that, Larry, and I'll tell you why. Because I don't want to sound arrogant. I don't want to sound flippant. But there's a Russian writer, his name's Fyodor Dostoevsky, I think, if I pronounce that correctly, and I think in one of his books,
Dostoevsky,
Be
sure.
Simple and Rediscover the World. Now, I have to tell you that when I came into the league, we're talking 50 years ago almost, in 1971, you know, the weight room at Shea Stadium consisted of a universal gym. That was it. If you remember those old universal gyms.
Sure.
I mean, you know, you could put one in your closet, for crying out loud. I think it had a bench press and a chin. I don't remember, no lat pull down or whatever. And I never lifted weights to begin with. I had kind of an unorthodox workout thing when I did work out. And so I kind of look at guys and I don't know. I don't know the answer as to how much work you have to do in the off season to remain competitive with your fellow players. I mean, my personal feelings is that if you have the chops and you were born genetically gifted from most people and you're able to play this game. Now, if you're a borderline guy, that may be different. But if you're a guy, you're a running back and you weigh 215 pounds and you run the 40 in 4.5 seconds, I can't see where having to do the really religious daily or every other day lifting the weights, getting around, I don't think that really changes anything. I think that we've gotten so scientific that we have to, and we've made it so much more complex than the matter really is, that all you really have to do is play football. And in order to get in shape for football, you play football. I don't think, I'm not saying there's, getting stronger isn't a good thing. Of course it is. And certainly for people that are older, to maintain your muscle mass, that's clearly a good thing. But I think for young guys in their 20s, and there you go, perfect example, Larry. For guys that are in their, in their 20s and that they're in the peak years of their lives, I don't think they're going to miss that much. I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. When we went on strike that year in 1982, Joe had a meeting, Theismann, and he had everybody over to his house, and then he formed a practice. And I went over there for one practice, so to speak. And, they were just basically throwing passes. And I'm going, well, I'm not in the passing game. That was the last time they seen me. They saw me for 6 weeks. I went deer hunting the whole time. I didn't work out. I didn't run. I didn't do anything. We came back. We picked up the season. And, next thing you know, the team goes to the Super Bowl and wins it. So I'm thinking in this situation when it comes to some of this stuff, and I was reading some other articles getting about the draft and what's going to happen to these guys coming out of college, that nobody's got to look at them because the 30 whatever visits that teams have to bring guys in that didn't go to the combine. I really think that it's, once again, we're looking at something that it's going to be fine on its own. It'll figure its own way out, that we don't have to overthink it. I mean, the big difference I would say between then being back in the 70s and 80s when I played and now is the playbook. I think that maybe that's gotten more complicated. But with the computers and the fact that they can continually disseminate information, i.e. formations, whatever they want to do, guys can study this all day long. They can't go anywhere. So on the one hand, from the mental aspect of it, they may be sharper than they normally would be. But for the most part, football is football. It's a pretty simple sport to a certain extent. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of coaches that would disagree with me. But if you can go out there and do your job, and a lot of that has to do, if you know your plays and you're comfortable with that, chances are you've got the physical talent to do it. I think it'll all work out. And, you look back on it and go, yeah, we got all worried about it. And, everything went the way it was supposed to go. So I'm optimistic. I don't think the big thing is, getting control of the situation where that eventually teams can get back together and actually start to practice and start to play games. But, I think it's very premature to get too worried about guys not getting the proper work right now, or, and getting in the weight room and doing all the running. Because if you look at, then I'll flip it the other way. In some ways, this may be a blessing, because let's just say that they've been overdoing it for the past 15 or 20 years. And now all of a sudden people's got a chance to step back from it and realize maybe there's a little bit, we're getting too competitive, that we need a little more rest than we need work. Of course, I'm always a big believer in more rest than work, Larry.
That's that. Yeah.
But honestly, I
sure.
believe that there, you may be simple and rediscover the world. There may be something that comes out of this, something you wouldn't have expected, a benefit going in that you come out with. A little serendipity, if you will.
Yeah, we're going to take a break. We're going to talk about the draft, talk about the new playoff format. But, Sonny has said it to me, and you're alluding to it, that players are faster and they're bigger and they're stronger, but they're also working out year round. So that break is something they aren't used to. It'll be interesting to see how that impacts their bodies when the season does start, because they will not be doing the same amount of work as they would be if they're at the facility. Did you know the Redskins are sponsored by Koch Industries? That's K-O-C-H, Koch. 67,000 U.S. employees make a lot of things that make the game day better, and we thank them for that. Greener turf, they make that. Stronger paper products for tailgating, they make that. Electronic components and TVs and smart devices so you can watch a Redskins game anywhere, they make that as well. See all they make on and off the field at kochmakesthat.com. And a reminder to stay connected with the Redskins during this time at Redskins, Instagram, Twitter, redskins.com, the official Redskins app. I can tell you now, folks are doing a great job working overtime. And I'll tell you, there's a couple of very special things happening coming up on redskins.com and some of the Redskins social channels. On Thursday at 6 o'clock, the NFL Films Year in Review show from 1982 will be posted, which is a very important year for you.
Yes,
and then, and then on Friday, a two-parter. We've got the documentary, which the Redskins Broadcast Network did, called 18 Plays. Now, that's the story of Super Bowl 22, when Doug and the guys did 35 points in 18 plays. And they talk about every one of those plays. Guys like Timmy Smith and Gary Clark and Ricky Sanders are all part of this documentary. That's at 6 o'clock on redskins.com and YouTube this Friday. Then at 7 o'clock on Friday is the actual game broadcast of Super Bowl 22. So you'll have the documentary first, and afterwards you could see how that unfolded live. And that's like 4 hours of entertainment for our fans. So I invite everybody to stay connected with the Redskins.
Very well. Very good, Larry. Thank you for that.
Riggins. He's going to go all the way unless Blackwood can catch him, and he can't.
They left the scoreboard out. I remember seeing Redskins 27, Dolphins 17. And it was that moment of truth where I went, damn, I'm a world champion.
John, when he walked, he had a little bop to him. And besides that, he had the booty out there. They nicknamed him Chocolate Chip.
Story time with Riggo.
Anyway, now, where do you want to go first? You want to look at the draft? Let's look at the team.
Let me ask you this. Are you aware of what Tiger King is?
Tiger King?
Tiger King.
No.
It is the hottest thing going on Netflix. It's about the big cat zoos in the United States where folks raise lions and tigers and the unique personalities that are in that world. I would urge you to do that. You might be one of the few people during this time of quarantine that has not seen that Netflix show. So I think it is something that would fascinate John Riggins. And you know what? Maybe next week on Riggo the Diesel, you will have consumed. There's 7 episodes. And when I started watching it last weekend, I watched it all the way through. I watched it for 7 straight hours in 2 days because I couldn't stop watching it. Guarantee you Coco knows what it is. Tiger King.
And it's all about the big cats in the zoos?
Yes. There are people who have private zoos that raise their own tigers and lions. And there's a guy named Joe Exotic, and I'm not going to spoil it for you, but there's a lot of people who are watching this know what I'm talking about, who is one of the most unique personalities on earth. He is currently incarcerated. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Let me just give you, when I was in Africa back in 85, March of 85, we were hunting on a property that was basically a ranch. It was about a 100,000-acre ranch. And the owner of the property had rescued a lioness cub and had taken it in as a pet. And I remember being over at the house, and this lion was in the house. And I got to tell you, you see a cat like that. Now, we were done hunting for the day, and he did have some cold beer there. Well, after about 3 or 4 beers, I finally got the nerve to get a little closer to the cat. The cat was completely indifferent to me. It walked by me. It almost knocked me down by barely touching me. The cat and his dog were going hunting. They would be gone for 2 or 3 days. The cat would kill something, and him and the dog would eat, and then they'd come back home. Or I guess her. it was the damnedest thing. But yeah, I will definitely check that out.
Check it out. And also the NFL draft. We know that the draft's going to happen, and the owners had a conference call that was well reported. And I guess one point that has not really been clarified is the so-called war rooms at each one of the NFL facilities. The facilities are closed, but for instance, here in the state of Virginia, where I live, the governor's order was that private businesses can stay open as long as it's not more than 10 people. So if you've got a real estate office or you've got a law office and you have to practice social distancing and it can't be more than 10 people. So what about New York? That's not the case in New York. And then you take it to the next step. The NFL has said teams cannot go in their facilities. So where will these war rooms be? How many people will be allowed in the war rooms? And where will this communication come from to be able to connect all 32 teams, along with what I'm figuring is going to be New York, where the commissioner is going to still going to get a card handed to him, and he's still going to read the picks. And I saw a story today. They might add a couple minutes to the picks in case there's trades and the need to pick up a phone. I mean, this is a very confusing situation. The draft will go on, but I guarantee you a lot of time is being put into the logistics of it, and some of it hasn't been determined yet.
You know, I'm glad you brought this up, because myself, I'm a little bit confused as to what coaches are allowed to do and not do. Because like there's some states, I would think if you're in Wyoming, because that's one of the states with I think some of the fewer cases reported, I got a feeling the people in Wyoming still can kind of go about their business and do what they want to a certain extent. Maybe not. I mean, they've got to practice social distancing, I'm sure, but still they're allowed out of their houses, so to speak. Plus, it's an agricultural state for the most part, a lot of ranching and that type of stuff. Mining, but the mining's winding down, as we all know about with coal and all that stuff. But is the league allowing coaches to meet at, let's just say, it can 9 coaches go to Coach Rivera's house and sit down and have a meeting over there, or is that something that's not allowed? And if you're in a seat, I would think they have to keep the playing field level, because if you're like in New York, I don't think they would allow that, or New Jersey, because of the situation with the virus up there. Then that would give, like I said, teams, let's say maybe Kansas City or Denver, I don't know, pick a team or Buffalo perhaps, where perhaps the coronavirus isn't as strong, where it's a little bit more relaxed there. Do you know of any mandates out of the commissioner's office that says, no, you have to stay? In other words, everything has to be done by teleconference?
I think that's the case. I don't know if that's an edict. I know that the facilities are not open at any of the 32 NFL teams. Then you can look down New Orleans, where they're getting it pretty bad down there, and Sean Payton is
their head coach is just Sean Payton just is getting over the coronavirus.
Yeah, I mean, and so how are they doing it? I think, again, John, if me and you can speak like this, and if Stevie can take what we're talking about and put it on our website, and people can see that, I mean, there's some things these guys can do. I think you could have 10 people on one of these conference calls. I mean, it really is that you're forcing late adapters to adapt, like you and me, who might, a year ago, I might have said, hey, ain't no way I'm going to know how to do this. But through the need to do it, we've done it. Now, also brings me to what we did hear confirmed a couple days ago is the playoffs are going to get expanded. And again, the NFL somehow keeps making news when we just need sports news. Earlier today, I saw where Wimbledon was canceled. So, I mean, that's a tradition that goes back over 100 years. So this is going to take us into the summer, I would think. But for you're talking about the NFL playoffs now, that you're going to add a couple of wild card teams, and that each conference has an additional team, and each conference will have one team that has the top record that will get a bye in the first round. So there's only 2 teams getting a bye in the first round: the best team in the NFC and the best team in the AFC. The top 3 teams, therefore, the other 3 division winners, will host wildcard games, and the 3 wildcard teams will play there. So you'll have 6 games over the first 2 days of the first round of the playoffs. So that's going to be one heck of a playoff weekend. 3 games on one day, 3 games on the next day.
It has been 4 games over the first weekend, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
A game is added on Saturday and a game added. I guess they will take place on Saturday and Sunday.
Yes. And I'm sure the team that plays on Sunday night probably would not be required to play the following Saturday early game. You figure, just again, talking about competitive balance, you would think that's the case. But, man, I tell you what, when football starts, people are going to be hungry for football, whenever that might be. And the league said this week they plan on a regular start, but obviously the situation will dictate that down the road.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking this today. I'm wondering, because I don't know for sure, but I think across the league, a lot of people are staying home and watching games on television, and the attendance is down a little bit. I don't know 100% about the 2019 season, but I believe attendance is down a little bit. One would think after everybody having to stay home, it's almost like island fever, that, you know, whenever this gets out, you know, to get to go to an event and witness it in person, I would think it may have the opposite effect and drive attendance, where more people are wanting to get out and go see a live football game as opposed to staying at home, because they've been watching TV for 6 months and they're kind of tired of it.
I agree with you. Last thing I'm going to say, and then we'll say goodbye. Not only could that happen, but TV ratings going to go up too. Watch this. TV ratings this year for the NFL go up again, because people are just going to need something to watch. And baseball, who knows? Basketball, who knows? NHL, who knows? And for the NFL, there is a little bit of runway here to hopefully allow us to see everything go exactly as planned. So we'll see, but it's people, cabin fever. You're right. How long before that sets in? I don't know.
So far, so good here at the Riggins household. By the way, I just mentioned to everybody who tunes into this podcast, be careful when you get on your computer. There's a lot of scammers out there right now. A lot of people that are going to may call you and tell you or send you something and say that we're with CDC or that we're with the World Health Organization. We need this, or we want you to do that. Be careful. That's all I'm going to say, because obviously in fact, there was a Van Gogh painting stole this week. It was stolen in Amsterdam. The museum was closed. Steve said, it looked like a good shot for us. They went and stole the painting, and nobody knows where it went. So, you know, that criminal element, unfortunately, at times like this, it seems to want to come out of the woodwork. So everybody be careful. And we'll see you next week. Right, Larry?
You got a deal. Thanks, John.
All right. Thank you, Larry.
At Coke, our 67,000 U.S. employees make things that make your game days better, like fertilizer for greener turf and stronger paper products for tailgating. Viewing the game from your couch? Coke also makes the electronic components in TVs and smart devices so you can watch your Redskins victory anywhere. Coke, we make that. See it all at KOCHmakesthat.com. That's CokeMakesThat.com.
From the desert to the coast, every Honda is inspired by our racing spirit and ready for any kind of road. From stylish turbocharged sedans like the Accord and Civic, to rugged all-wheel drive SUVs like the CR-V, HR-V, Pilot, and Passport. With safety features like Honda Sensing, including a collision mitigation braking system, adaptive cruise control, Honda Lane Watch, and more. Get a great deal on your favorite racing-inspired Honda. Race to WashingtonareaHondaDealers.com today to learn more.
Dear customer service, I can always count on Novak. My power is always on, my payments always go through, and Novak actually cares about the community they serve.
Dear Novak, your electric costs are reasonable. Some electricity is from alternative sources, and cost reductions are passed along during the year. Thanks.
Novak, power you can count on.
Are uninvited pests ruining your plans? Let PMSI, the pest control partner of the Washington Redskins, handle it for you. Call today for your free inspection, and they'll work around your schedule to provide you the best solution possible to defend your home territory against pests of all kinds, including mold. Visit mypmsi.com for the game plan to control the pests on your home turf. That's mypmsi.com.